Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 27 of Import Nights, the review series for GranTurismo's JDM performance car selection, and the vast majority of the cars in this series tend to be newer models from maybe the late 80s, but more so the 90s especially, with some from the early 2000s, and a couple which are later, but not very many at all. It does tend by far to be from the 90s. Those are where the most iconic JDM cars at least do tend to come from. This particular vehicle is an older JDM car, and it's a car which could fit within a couple of different series. You could feature it in a classic car series, a JDM series, even a sports car series, but it seemed appropriate at least to fit it within either the classic or JDM category. And although an argument can be made for the classic category, I finally chose to fit it in this performance category instead, because of course the fair lady is known overall primarily as a JDM legend rather than just a classic legend. The older models, which tend to be identified more as Datsuns, they are more classics, but anything from the 80s onwards is much more of a JDM icon rather than just a classic icon. So that's why I decided to feature it here. Now, with all those semantics aside, this is a shockingly good sleeper car. It's a vehicle which some people do use, primarily from what I've seen, for top speed racing on GranTurismo 6, and it's a car which is really in its element when it comes to straight line performance. Now, the particular model is, of course, the 300ZX. And the newer model of the 300ZX is also monstrously quick. And it's known for being monstrously quick. This one, not so much. As I said, it is known by some people, but nowhere near as many. Now, the engine in this particular car is a 3 litre, it's rear-wheel drive, and you can turbocharge the engine in this model up to a very impressive 678 horsepower. That's pretty good for a car from 1983. Now, the torque is also very high, which isn't too surprising for a slightly larger JDM engine, at 577 foot-pounds. And one of the best advantages, as many of you guys will probably know, but for those who don't, of having a torquier, larger capacity engine is that a larger capacity engine can produce that torque and that power, maybe even the same torque and power as a smaller capacity engine, but typically a larger engine will be able to produce those numbers without as much stress on the engine. If it's a larger engine, the main advantage of that is not that you can have more power, because it just doesn't work like that. That's a common misconception, but an understandable one. The advantage of a larger engine is how easily it can cope with an increase in power or torque. It's what you would probably best term lazy torque. That's why big American engines produce big lazy torque. They're great for that. And although not to the same degree, that's similar with this vehicle. 577 foot-pounds is a torque level that you could get out of a 2 litre turbo, but the advantage of getting it from this 3 litre turbo is that the engine can produce that more easily, so it's not as under stress. And although reliability doesn't really matter on the game, in real life obviously much more so. Now, the performance that this car can give you, particularly in a straight line, is extremely rapid. It's literally faster than some supercars on GT6. It's faster than the TVR Speed 12, it's faster than the Jaguar XJ220, and it's even bordering on the McLaren F1. In fact, it's pretty much on par with that vehicle, and given the fact that it's got about 200 or 300 horsepower less than at least two of those cars, significantly less than the Speed 12, that really is remarkable, but not too surprising given that it is a Japanese performance car. Now, the weight on the vehicle is also pretty good. It weighs 1130 kilos, which for a vehicle of its size and spec isn't too bad. The PP, I would say, is very good at 572. That's very usable, and although it's certainly not the quickest of vehicles at that level, if you do choose to use it, especially on tracks where you can use that monstrous power, then it will serve you well. Tracks like Monza, Route 7, of course Route X, the Le Mans, various others like that, this car can really dominate the straights, especially if you're up against other old school vehicles, especially from the 80s. This is one of the quickest 80s cars in the game, Japanese or otherwise. Now, the value for money on Japanese performance cars is pretty much always great. This car is no exception. It cost 32,000 credits. That is a fantastic price, given that it is an older vehicle. It's got more of a classic look, which I know many JDM fans are a fan of, and it has performance which, like some other classics, really belies its age. It's such a good car, even against modern vehicles, and unlike many straight-line missiles, this can actually back it up with trackability as well. The handling on this car is excellent. In fact, I would say that this 300ZX possibly has better handling than the newer model 300ZX. Now, of course, with tuning that could change, but that's just my personal opinion. The newer 300ZX, although extremely rapid, is a bit more tail-happy. This vehicle is slower, of course, but it can still do around 265, 270-ish miles per hour without NOS or slipstream. That is monstrously quick. It can be built to be a drift car, a circuit car, a drag car, a top speed racer, and a PP-specific vehicle. And for 32 grand, that kind of versatility is exactly what you want on a game with a massive career mode and lots of seasonal events, and, of course, online races as well. In short, this is a vehicle which more people really should use, but the fact that they don't, well, apart from being their loss, is actually great for those of us who do use it, because you're rewarded for not going down the mainstream path by actually finding a vehicle that is not just good or passable, but is actually brilliant. It's not a premium, and that's pretty much the only downside that it has, but that's a downside that many vehicles still have on GranTurismo. And overall, if you're looking for a strong all-round machine, especially if you're under 700 horsepower, it's very difficult to find a better one than this. But that's it for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.